Welcome to Even Tacos Fall Apart, a podcast where vulnerability meets resilience. I'm MommaFoxFire, and I am really glad you're here today. This episode is a special one. It was actually recorded way back in 2021. And while some things have changed since then, the conversation you're about to hear is just as relevant now as it was then. Maybe even more so. We're talking about something that hits hard for a lot of people, myself included, and that's gaslighting and toxic relationships. This isn't a buzzword conversation. I mentioned that this was recorded back in 2021. I know those are being thrown around a lot today. It's real. If you've ever felt like you are constantly second-guessing yourself, questioning your reality, or wondering how things got so confusing and heavy with someone in your life, this episode might speak to you. Gaslighting isn't always obvious. It can sneak in slowly and feel like death by 1,000 tiny manipulations. It can come from a partner, a parent, a friend, or even a boss. And when you're in it, it's disorienting as hell. Toxic relationships come in many forms. Sometimes they're loud and chaotic, but a lot of times they're quiet and sneaky. You might feel isolated. You might feel like you're walking on eggshells. You might even feel like you're the one who's messing up, when really you're being emotionally worn down over time. This kind of abuse doesn't leave visible scars, but it can absolutely mess with your sense of self, your confidence, and your ability to trust people, including trusting yourself. The good news is that you are not alone, and you can get out. You can heal. You can rebuild your sense of self after someone has tried to break it down. In this conversation, I talk with Dr. Stephanie Sarkis. She's a licensed mental health counselor, an expert on gaslighting and narcissistic abuse, and she's written multiple books on the topic. She knows what she's talking about, but more importantly, she has a way of explaining things that just clicks. We talk about how gaslighting shows up in everyday life, the subtle signs that often get brushed off, and how to begin reclaiming your power when you've been stuck in a cycle of manipulation. I'll also say this, if you're listening and this stuff feels a little too familiar, I get you. Whether you're still in it, just starting to name it, or on the other side trying to pick up the pieces, this space and this conversation is for you. You deserve peace, you deserve clarity, and you deserve to feel like yourself again. So take a deep breath, grab a drink, find a comfy spot, and let's get into it. Here's my interview with Dr. Stephanie Sarkis, recorded in 2021 on gaslighting and toxic relationships. Happy Monday, everybody. I hope y'all are doing great today. We are here with another Mental Health Monday. This is Stephanie Sarkis. Super pumped to have her here to talk about toxic relationships and gaslighting. And I just bumped my mic and it made it go loose. And of course I did, because that's how we do here. Yo, Bite Mark, how are you today? Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. I do have a question queue open, so if you have any questions, exclamation point, the letter Q, type your question, it'll pop it into a queue, and I'll make sure to ask it of our guest here. Stephanie's a psychotherapist specializing in anxiety, gaslighting, narcissistic abuse, and ADHD. She's the author of several books. I do have links, including best-selling Gaslighting, Recognizing Manipulative and Emotionally Abusive People and Break Free. Dr. Sarkis is a national certified counselor, licensed mental health counselor, American Mental Health Counselors Association diplomat, and a Florida Supreme Court certified family and circuit mediator. She's been in private practice for 20 years. She's a senior contributor for Forbes and is also a contributor to Psychology Today and host of the Talking Brains podcast. Yes, I have a link for that too. Based in Tampa, Florida. So let me get you some of these links. Thank you so much, Puck, for that. I appreciate it. Here's some links to Twitter, website, direct link to Talking Brains, which is also on the website as well. And then a Goodreads link to the book if you want to check it out. I added it to my list because it sounds like a good read. So if you have any questions, again, type them into chat, into the question queue, and we'll get going here. But thank you so much, Stephanie, for being here today with us. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So that, I mean, as you can tell from the bio there, you have a lot going on, from being a counselor, a mediator, writing best-selling books, which is a challenge in itself that I don't even begin to imagine how difficult it is to write a book.
being a contributor to Forbes, to Psychology Today, podcast host on Talking Brains. I know you're involved in some other podcasts as well. Which of those is your favorite, or which one do you get the most satisfaction from?
This sounds really cliche, but I think the thing that makes it my favorite is any way I can help people. That's such a counselor answer, isn't it? It's such a counselor answer. I just really enjoy helping people. If I can make somebody's life better from the work that I do, that's great. And the second part, I think the thing that gives me most meaning too is hearing back from people that something that I've done has helped. Because when you're writing a book, you don't always know the impact. But when I get people's emails or they call me and let me know how much it's helped, that means a lot because like you said, it's a lot to write a book. I mean, I love writing, but I think it's a long process. So when I can hear someone tell me that that they left their toxic relationship or they realized that they were going through gaslighting, I think that really makes my day, that someone's read something and made some positive changes in their life. So what more could I ask for?
Yeah, that sounds really rewarding. So, I mean, not only are you directly helping people with counseling, but then through the book and you're getting this feedback from the book. I write and edit for a living for an architecture engineering firm. We write proposals and everything. And it takes so much effort just to write something pretty straightforward and factual, and simple. I can't imagine just pulling it out of my brain and trying to put something that I just want to write onto paper. It sounds like a monumental challenge.
Well, I think there have been so many people I've seen that have been in gaslighting relationships or been in toxic relationships while also having ADHD, anxiety, and depression. So I think those clients I've worked with have really kind of helped me write the book as well, because there's a lot of quotes and gaslighting from people that have been through abusive relationships. So I really have to thank all those people that have contributed and were okay with me including their quotes, because I think that's what really matters, is hearing from other people who've been through it. There's this idea of universality, which is you realize you're not the only one that's been through this. And I think that's such a healing, cathartic thing. Yeah,
absolutely. I got out of a relationship, just got divorced. Actually, it was finalized this year. And it was very much a toxic relationship, lots of gaslighting, narcissistic abuse, everything, like package deal, that one. And the reason that I was able to get the strength up to leave and work through that I did need to leave was because of my therapist. I wouldn't have been able to do that without her. So there's just the work that you do and everything is so helpful for a lot of people. And then the book sounds like it's really helpful as well.
And thank you for acknowledging her. I think that's so important that a lot of us, especially us speaking for therapists, just this whole pandemic time has been, we're going through the pandemic and the quarantine just like everyone else. Yeah. So I think it's really helpful if you have a therapist, to give them some feedback about how much they've helped. Because I think a lot of us are really needing to hear that right now, because especially again, in the last year, a lot of people needed help. And again, we're going through some of the same stuff. Yep. So reach out to your therapist if you have one, and let them know that they found, you found them to be helpful. And thank you so much for doing that for your therapist.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Listen, therapists are people too.
Right. Yes, we are.
Yes. This is a good moment to acknowledge that you'll see up at the top here, this says not a pro. That's because I am not a professional mental health worker. You'll see, that way, over here on Stephanie's, that she is an actual pro, but this is a reminder that she is not your actual pro. So any questions that you ask, let's make sure that they are on topic, but not necessarily diagnosing. We're not diagnosing here. So just a quick reminder. Therapists are awesome people. That's right. Absolutely. Got to stick that awesome in there. Yeah.
Thank you.
So what are some of your...
on behalf of therapists.
Yeah, there you go. What are some of your favorite hobbies? And do you feel that there are any distinctions between what you consider hobbies and what you consider self-care for yourself?
I travel a lot. Well, I mean, the before time I traveled.
Yeah.
So that's one. I also do a lot of gardening. I think that there is a correlation between hobbies and self-care. Mm-hmm. It also depends on if you can kind of keep a rein on how much money you're investing in it too. I think when you don't watch how much money you're investing in it, I think then it gets to be a little less self-care, a little more anxiety. But if you can kind of keep things within your budget, I think that helps. So I find being outside to be very therapeutic. I think that's a big thing. I love being near the water. And luckily I'm in a place that I can do that. So I think that's the main thing is I think being outside, there's a different pace to nature. And I think that's really important that it just kind of helps you slow things down and realize, what kind of an infinite speck we are in the universe when you're outside in nature and you see birds and animals around. And it just helps you realize that your issues are your issues, but also there's a much bigger picture.
Yeah.
So those are just a couple of things I do, and hopefully I can get back to traveling. So
yeah, I mean, that would be a great thing to be able to get back to doing.
Well, I think our brains thank us for getting a different change of scenery. And I think that's part of the stress of being quarantined is that we weren't able to change our surroundings.
Yeah.
And our brains got kind of bored with it, or really bored.
Oh, absolutely.
So
my kids are ready to travel. This summer was just killer for them because they're used to, we don't go on big like fancy vacations, but we go to the beach or we go to the mountains and camp or just something for a week in the summer, and we just didn't get that, and it was not great. They were pretty sad. Yeah.
Well, you bring up a good point. You don't even have to spend a lot of money to go travel somewhere. Being outside doesn't cost you anything.
Right.
So, just getting a different change of scenery can be helpful.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So I want to just pay some respects in chat here. Thank you, NFS, for that follow. I appreciate it. Puck, thank you so much as well. I'm glad that you're here, and you stole the first. You stole the first from Bite. So there you go. Listen, they usually get it. And thank you for that sub. I appreciate that too. Welcome. Yes, absolutely.
I'm so happy I know what this all means too. Yay, I feel so with it.
You are absolutely with it. Listen, if I can be with it, anyone can be with it. All right. So can you tell us a little bit more about your experiences and what made you become interested in specializing in mental health?
Sure. I've always wanted to be a counselor. I actually was going to work for CNN in my undergrad degrees in telecom production. But I decided I really always wanted to be a therapist. And I was the person in high school that everybody would go to with their relationship issues. And so I realized that I was probably a good listener for people. And then I took psychology in high school, and I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. So then I, got my degree in telecom, of course, because that's what you do when you want to go into counseling. So I got a telecom degree, and then I went into the University of Florida counselor education program. That's how I became a counselor. So I've always been fascinated with people and their stories and how people got to certain places in their lives and what their thought processes are. So I think that's kind of what started it. And just also my family, ADHD, anxiety, probably the stuff a lot of people have in their families. And that was probably a kernel of it. And then just the helping profession in itself. I really just love learning about people.
Yeah. So you mentioned your undergrad degree. You have like 4 degrees from University of Florida, right?
Right.
Did you want to go to University of Florida from the get-go, or is that just like where you went?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
No, I want to go from the get-go. Yeah. So my last 3 degrees are all from the counselor education program at UF. So that's where I got my PhD in mental health counseling.
Yeah. Nice. I like it when people are really gung-ho about their school. That's neat.
Oh, yeah.
Because I didn't have that.
Like I had gators in my wedding cake.
I love it.
Flowers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's incredible.
That's a good way, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. NFS, a therapist with the unsung heroes of this whole pandemic shit show. Thank you for doing what you do. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
That's commitment right there.
Speaking on behalf of all therapists.
Absolutely. Listen, somebody's got to, right?
Right.
It can't be me.
I'll do it.
There you go. I like it. So what's your favorite thing about
I wonder how many thousands of therapists there are in the country and around the world.
I don't know. That's interesting.
On behalf of all of them, that's a lot of pressure, but I think I can do it.
You can at least say thank you on behalf of all of them. That's not a big thing.
Controversial. That's okay. Yeah.
Surely all of them would say thank you.
Of course. We'll just go with it. Yeah.
I like it. So what's your favorite thing about working in the mental health field? And also, what are some of the biggest challenges about it?
I'll start with the challenges first. The first challenge, I think, especially like during the pandemic, is just taking time to do proactive self-care, not just reactive. And when I talk about proactive self-care, it's taking care of yourself before you reach chronic stress or chronic burnout. And then reactive is, oh, I've hit a roadblock. I need to start taking care of myself. So I think that's the biggest challenge, making sure you're out ahead of the stress and also knowing how to leave stuff, and kind of not detach, but kind of leave stuff and then go about your day. And there's always that work-life balance thing too. That's tricky. But the positives are, I love talking with people. I love helping people. I love it when people discover like new things about themselves and can take positive steps towards change. I also like helping people through times where it seems like they aren't sure where to go next. So I just find it really rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely hard to, I don't know did you work from home before the pandemic and everything? Or were you in an office?
Somewhat, but now I'm completely from home. And so my commute is, instead of an hour, it's now like 30 seconds, which I like. And I found that
is
clients
nice.
like it too, because you can have your cat or dog with you while you're doing therapy.
Like that guy over there.
And there's your Doge right there. So yeah, I think a lot of people have liked it. And I think out of my clients, I've only had a couple people request to be seen in person when I start doing that, if I start doing that again. Yeah. So a vast majority of people really like doing telehealth.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the part of that I don't like is that you were talking about leaving it, leaving like that separation of work life. Like that's just gone. It's like, I can't leave it because I can just sit here and send emails all night.
Well, I think, and the last tricky part about working from home too, right, is that it's hard to have the demarcation between work and home.
Yeah, right.
And that's been tricky for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people have had, working from home is great, but I think at the same time, we have to kind of look at how much time are we devoting to each thing. And it's really easy to get online and start, tippy tapping out some emails or doing something. We need to just take some time out for ourselves.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's usually good to have like a solid, stop time. Like I'm stopping at 9:30, whatever. So, people can watch your stream at 9:30 Eastern.
Yes. Yep.
Or, it could just be that, hey, at this time frame, I just need to start unwinding. I need to start, slowing down my work. Maybe just not going cold turkey, but at least, I'm only going to do this, this, and this, and then be done. But I think that's something we really need to check in with ourselves and make sure that we're pacing ourselves. Because it's really easy to get hyper-focused and go, I've answered one email, now I'm going to answer like 500 more. So we need to take a step back and make sure that what we're doing is in our best interest.
All right, we're going to stop talking about me now, and we're going to pet Zoom photo bombs are the best. They really are. They really are the best. I love them. So Jamie has a question. What are some early signs in a relationship that may indicate a narcissist? I think we can save that for in just a minute. We're gonna get to a little bit of gaslighting, everything. I think we'll save that for just a minute. But I want to ask this next question first because it's our question here, right? But do you have a serial killer or true crime story that fascinates you?
Betty Broderick. And actually I had the opportunity to be interviewed for, USA did the, and Bravo did the TV series I think it was a TV movie about Betty Broderick. And I was interviewed for the podcast to accompany the show, talking about gaslighting from that perspective. And so that was really fascinating to not only be able to know the story, but also to be able to, consult about it and talk a little bit about how emotional abuse played into it, and not in the way that people may have expected. That I know that Betty Broderick's story is that she underwent emotional abuse, and that she was justified. I put in quotes. But when you start picking apart things, you see how her ex-husband and his wife cannot speak for themselves, right?
Right.
So when you look at the behavior that she had towards them, which is something that, obviously she doesn't talk about, it's pretty frightening. So I think that was something I think that needed to be delved into, is that perpetrators can have a history of gaslighting, a history of emotional abuse towards people. And even if the perpetrator says, no, I never did this, it was all them, well, those people can no longer speak for themselves. So I think that's something we have to keep in mind. So that's one case that's always kind of fascinated me, from the perspective of her feeling like she was the victim the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when you start delving into it and reading transcripts and looking at some of the stuff that happened, there is obviously something that was happening from her end perpetrating things. So that's always kind of interested me, like how much either she's in denial or she needs to not talk about that piece.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it was kind of an honor to be able to be selected to be interviewed about the, I guess, machinations of her psychology and her antisocial personality issues and her gaslighting from that perspective, and be able to speak about it on the podcast connected to the show. So that was pretty neat.
Yeah. So which show was that you were interviewed for?
So the Dirty John series was started by LA Times, and they had the Dirty John series, and then they had that was the first season. And then they had the second part of that was the Betty Broderick story. So it was part. So Dirty John is like it's like a compendium of different true crime stuff. And so the initial Dirty John story was in LA Times, and they made a podcast, and they made a TV show about it. And then they made a TV show and podcast about Betty Broderick. So, and I think it aired on Bravo and USA.
That's pretty cool.
Pete and Christian Slater in it, I think.
Wow. Nice. Those some big names there.
I mean, it's a pretty fascinating story to look at the psychology behind her behavior.
Yeah. It's incredible what motivates people to do those kinds of things. It's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bite Mark asks, what is your favorite poem?
My favorite poem is Richard Cory by Edward Arlington Robinson, and it's about a man that walked through town. Everybody thought he had everything, and he, when he spoke, he always spoke eloquently, and he always wore nice clothes, and he always seemed to have his act together. And then one night he killed himself. And I think that poem is really important because it looks at the aspect of depression and suicide affect all people. Not just certain segments of our population. You may think that someone is doing really well and has their act together and seems pretty happy, but we never really know what's going on behind the scenes. And that people of all walks of life, all socioeconomic status, can have depression. And it's something we need to take really seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't tell us from the outside if somebody's smiling, but, completely depressed.
I think it's a common misconception that all depression is someone that doesn't get out of bed, but sometimes depression is just feeling like nothing.
Yeah. Yep. So we've got a couple of questions from chat here. So NFS says, what does healing look like for one who is on the receiving end of manipulation and emotional abuse? And also, how do you define gaslighting? Which takes us very, very nice segue there, NFS, into the next question, which is, we are focusing down on toxic relationships and gaslighting here. So maybe just explain what gaslighting is for those who haven't encountered it or haven't recognized it in their relationships or in their lives before.
Sure. Gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse, and the purpose is to keep you off kilter and question your reality. So a gaslighter might say to you, what you saw and heard isn't what you saw and heard. Or they may hide your belongings on you and tell you that you're irresponsible and you can't, control your own stuff. They may cut you off financially and then blame you for it. They may pit people against you and lie to you and say, well, your sister said this about you, so you're angry with your sister, when in fact the gaslighter completely lied about it. They also will love bomb you in the beginning of a relationship, which means it's not just, that kind of in the beginning of a relationship where it's all sunshine and butterflies. This is going above and beyond. You're the most important person I've ever met. Let's move in together. It's the first date, that kind of stuff. And then what happens is after they know that they've got their hooks in you, then they start devaluing you. So there's idealizing you, putting you up on the pedestal, and then you fall off the pedestal, and it's a long way down. So that's where you can all of a sudden go from doing no wrong to doing no right. And it's very confusing because you can't figure out why was everything great. It must be me that caused this to happen, that all of a sudden now I can't do anything right. And then eventually the gaslighter discards you, which means they get into chronic infidelity, or they will, you try to leave, they try to what's called hoover you back in or suck you back in because their narcissistic supply is running low.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pattern of, again, idealizing, devaluing, and then discard.
Yeah.
So gaslighting, again, is a emotional abuse type, and it's very insidious, which means it starts out really slowly. So again, it's usually not until people have been in a relationship months, years, before they realize that this pattern of behaviors happened. And the purpose of the gaslighter, what they are trying to do, is to isolate you and make you not believe your own reality. So you have to rely on them for their version of reality, which gives them more power and control over you.
Yeah. I never said that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a great, that's a great one. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I never said that. Yeah. That's one of them for
how
sure.
to heal from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the second part. Okay.
Yep. What does healing look like for one who's on the receiving end of manipulation and emotional abuse? Yeah.
So it's actually my upcoming book is going to be on recovering from toxic relationships. And that is, if you can cut off all contact, which is tricky if you have kids with a gaslighter, but if you don't, if you can cut off all contact and go what I call radio silence, block their emails, block their phone, tell your friends and family that you don't want to talk about them because the gaslighter will try to talk to you through them. Those are called flying monkeys, named after the flying monkeys in Wizard of Oz sending messages. So you want to make sure that people know that that is a no-fly zone for you, that you're not going to talk about that person. However, if you do have kids with a gaslighter, it's tricky to just cut them off. You really can't do that a lot of times. So instead, if you get a really strict parenting plan and even meet with a parent coordinator, because co-parenting with someone that's a gaslighter or narcissist is really difficult because they will try to bend rules. They will try to, if they have 30, if you have to wait like 30 minutes before you can leave and then you get time sharing for that night, they'll show up at like 29 minutes and 59 seconds. Right. So, they do stuff like push the boundaries of your parenting plan. So it's really important to get a really airtight, watertight, whatever word it is, parenting plan to make sure that everything is followed. And sometimes people have to do what's called a capsulated parenting style, which means you co-parent completely individually and you only check in with each other about emergencies or about any changes in exchange of children. Yeah. So that's a capsulated parenting approach. There's a couple episodes in Talking Brain podcast where I interview a parent coordinator or a psychologist about how to co-parent with a narcissist, because again, it gets really tricky. In cases where you are able to separate completely from someone, I advise you do that. You shut off all contact and don't look back. You may not even be able to do a closure. You may just have to just kind of drop off and rebuild. Because again, the hoovering process is very strong, and gaslighters will tell you whatever it is to bring you back in. And they'll tell you that everything's going to change, but pay attention to what they're doing, not what they're saying. Because what they're saying is virtually meaningless. It's what they do. And what you'll find is if you are sucked back in this relationship, the pathology starts almost immediately, and then it just gets worse. Mm-hmm. And also gaslighting is a kind of a gateway to eventually physical abuse. And as we all know, that can be lethal. So it's really important that we start paying attention early on to signs of emotional abuse, because that's usually where the abuse starts. Yeah.
NFS said in their case, it was a parent. Yeah. So what do you recommend if it's a parent-child relationship where that's occurring?
So if it's an adult child, you have to really consider whether you want to limit contact or cut off contact. And I don't say that lightly because I know that's difficult for a lot of people. I know, especially people sometimes will tell me, well, I don't think that I have a right to cut off contact with my parent. I need to be there for them. But if your parent's abusive towards you, then that's something that you really have to look at. It might be better for you to cut off contact or limit it. And that's okay. You're allowed to not have contact with your abuser. And I'll say that again, you're allowed to not have contact with your abuser. You are allowed to, and you have every right to not have contact with that person that's hurt you. I think that's something we really need to remember, because I know people will tell you, well, it's your parent. You should be nice to your parent. You should take care of your parents. Not necessarily. That doesn't apply to all cases. Sometimes you do need to have that distance. You need to have that cutoff in communication in order for you to heal. And I always recommend therapy too, because when parents are behaving like that, it can really do a number on us. So I think it's really important to talk with someone about it, because there's a lot of guilt and shame that gaslighters perpetrate upon their kids, upon their partners. And I think that's where it's important to talk with someone about that cycle of guilt and shame that they have perpetuated.
Yeah.
And that you don't have to own that.
Right. Right. A lot of guilt and shame comes with that. Absolutely. But okay, so the thing that always sticks in my mind, and I will say I have a great relationship with my parents. So this is easy for me to say, okay? But like, you didn't pick your parents, you didn't choose your parents, you didn't get to pick your parents. You don't technically owe them anything at all. They owe you everything because they brought you into the world, right? That's, like I said, way easy for me to say because I have a wonderful relationship with my parents. I do want to go back to something that you said earlier about the parenting piece, because what I have in place is that, like, I don't interact with him at all. He picks up from school, and that's where the switch is. Like, he picks him up after school on a certain day. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really something that's important. So if you have to interact with another parent who has that pattern of abuse and pattern of gaslighting, what are some things that you can do to kind of protect yourself and then also protect your child at the same time?
I think working with a parent coordinator is really good because there are some things you are going to have to negotiate. And when you talk through a parent coordinator, I think it's a lot easier to get those accomplished, especially if a gaslighter or narcissist is trying to fight you just for the sake of fighting you. Mm-hmm. I think it's also important to limit how you communicate. There are apps like Our Family Wizard, and I knew I was going to forget the other one. If I remembered one, I was going to forget the other one. Our Family Wizard, there's one more too. Oh, Talking Parents. Those are two apps where you can talk through those apps, and they timestamp everything. They record everything.
Oh, wow.
They tell you when the communication's been read. And that's a lower stress version of communicating. I'm not going to say it's no stress, because there's always some kind of stress when you're co-parenting with a narcissist or gaslighter. But I think that keeps things much more likely to be on an even keel if it's mm-hmm. through an app that you can submit those messages to your attorney if need be, or to the court. Because talking on the phone just usually devolves into, there's shaming and it's really hard to keep your composure when you've got someone personally attacking you. Right. And it's very easy for gaslighters and narcissists to all of a sudden like slip in a little something about, questioning your parenting, because they know that's what gets people, right? That's a big button to push. And so they'll say something totally unrelated, then all of a sudden slip something in about what a terrible parent you are. So it's really important to do that on an app instead. You can have that put in your parenting agreement that you will only communicate on an app, and you specify what app. Mm-hmm. They also, I think it's on Talking Parents, they have a tone detector that will tell you if what you're typing is too kind of inflammatory, and it doesn't stop you from sending it, but at least gives a
tells you, right?
It gives a moment to say, maybe I shouldn't be saying that.
Yeah.
So that's a feature that can be added. You can have that add in your parenting plan, that they have to have that tone detector added to the app. So that's one thing I've seen that really works. And also having a neutral exchange point, or having mm-hmm. someone exchange the children for you, or like you said, mm-hmm. doing school pickup. Yeah. You don't have to have contact with that person. And also having it added that there's no talking badly about the other parent, even mm-hmm. if the parent assumes the kid's not in the room. That's a tricky one, because there have been narcissists that have said, well, I didn't know my kid was in the room. When you knew the kid was at your house, right? So the kid's going to hear you.
Yeah.
And also making sure that no legal documents are left out in a place where the child can read them. That's also been an issue with narcissists and gaslighters. So you can have that added to your parenting plan, that those things are not to occur. Nor is the parent allowed to have the children call you by your first name rather than mom or dad. That's another one, because that's a parental alienation technique, is that parents will get their kids to call the other parent by their first name instead of their parent.
Man.
So you get that added to your plan too.
Boy, that's one I didn't even think of. I have, so I will say that the no disparaging remarks one, that's impossible to enforce. It's absolutely impossible. Unfortunately, I need this tone detector
stuff built up. But if you have enough stuff built up, you can say, hey, on this parenting plan, so here are the 5 things that you haven't done. Mm-hmm. Or the attorney says, here are the 5 things that haven't been followed. So by itself, disparaging the parent may not be enough.
Right.
But when it's added in.
A
bunch of other things. And sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're fine.
I also wanted to bring up a point too, that you have a really good relationship with your parents, and you had a relationship that was toxic too. So I think that we need to look at that too, is that you can have healthy relationships with your parents and still have a toxic relationship. No one is immune from getting into these kind of relationships. No one.
Yeah.
Therapists have gotten these into these kind of relationships. You know, people that, again, have had great relationships with their families have gotten these relationships. There's no one size fits all to this, right? Everyone is immune to it.
Right.
Or everybody's not immune to it, I guess.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
I was just going to say, I need this tone detector for like work emails.
As per my email. Right. Yeah.
You might want to tone that down. you might want to chill on that one. You might want to chill. Want to pay respect to Chosen. Thank you so much for that raid. Welcome everyone who is here with Chosen. I'm MommaFoxFire. We are doing a Mental Health Monday. This is our guest, Stephanie Sarkis. She is here talking with us about toxic relationships and gaslighting. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop those into chat and we will answer them as we can. Hey, Coco, how are you? OJ, welcome. Posture check. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I am going to roll my shoulders back a little bit. And we got to that chat. Yeah, I need that just for all the things. I'm guessing, Bite, that is about the tone checker, probably. I would say.
Wouldn't that be great if we just had that internal thing with us?
Yes,
Maybe we shouldn't say that.
Well, it's like I was talking before we started here about the at everyone, and it's like the confirmation. It doesn't mean I'm not going to do it.
Are you sure you want to do that? Right.
Yes.
Well, I always say to people, is this in your best interest? Or is this in your kids' best interest?
Right.
That's something just to pause and ask yourself throughout the day.
Yeah. So I do want to pull this question back up from earlier, which it's not working. I'll see why this isn't showing up. But Jamie asked earlier, what are some early signs in a relationship that may indicate that you are in a relationship with a narcissist?
So it's on a first date that what they look like and how they're behaving is not what you saw online. It's completely different. You have someone that is constantly talking about themselves, not asking about you. Also, someone that asks you deeply personal questions that are inappropriate to ask on a first date. What they're trying to do is gather ammunition on you, and they want you to be vulnerable so they can strike. So someone that asks you what your deepest fears are or what your biggest losses in life, if they're asking you that on the first date, that's a big red flag. You don't want to give up that information to someone that quickly. You know, that's something that builds up with emotional intimacy, and they don't have that with you yet. Also, any signs of them disparaging their ex or their parents, usually the appropriate response is just to say it didn't work out. And again, once you get to know someone better down the line, you can talk about those things, but not on a first date. So you can tell a lot of things just by the very beginning of meeting someone. Also, how do they treat wait staff? How do they treat people that they feel are beneath them? And you'll see that people will be rude to wait staff. They will yell at them. This is the kind of person you do not want another date with. And I think part of our tendency as people is that if we're on a date somewhere, we don't want to be rude and just leave. But that's what you have to do, because the more that you spend time with this person, every minute that passes by, you're more likely to get into a relationship with this person. So you need to just excuse yourself and leave. You put some money on the table and go. So this type of person, again, is trying to get their claws in you. And again, one of the ways they do that is start asking deeply personal questions. And then you feel like you've given up a piece of yourself. So you're more likely to, again, stick with them.
Yeah, that's sharing that part of you. And then, you know, if they share something back, then you feel that more and more connected.
But they don't share something back. That's the
Buy
tricky
some Girl
part, is
Scout
they
cookies.
will never share back the same amount that you're sharing.
Please.
So keep that in mind.
Save me from this Girl
And they
Scout
won't ask
cookie
you how
hell.
your day went either. Like they
And
don't
buy
ask
them.
about just daily stuff.
Yeah.
Because they don't really care. And they do cognitive empathy, which looks like they care, but there's no feeling behind it. And you can kind of tell after a while, like when someone's saying something and there's no emotion behind it, they'll say, well, yeah, how was your day? You know, like just kind of toss it aside. Or they'll do it only because you did it. And they think, oh, well, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to ask about each other's day. But they don't really care what your answer is. They just like keep going. So,
yeah. So once you're like, let's say that you're past the first few dates and you've, you know, you're kind of a little bit into the relationship and maybe you haven't noticed it quite yet. What are some things to look for whenever that those behaviors first start to turn for the worst?
if your trusted friends or family tell you that this person seems off or they don't seem trustworthy or that you already seem different, pay attention to that. because those people know you well. And again, I say trusted because not everybody's good for us. But if you have friends and family that, you know, have your back and they're solid people and they're telling you that something's off, listen to them. Listen to your intuition. That feeling that tells you this is too good to be true or something's wrong, that's 99.999% on the mark. So listen to that. The longer you're in this type of relationship, the less you trust your intuition. Because again, the gaslighter wants you to believe their version of reality, not yours. So pay attention to intuition. If your kids tell you they think something's off, listen to that. If you find that you are changing what you're doing, you can't be yourself because you're concerned that if you're yourself, that you'll get rejected. That's another sign that this is not a healthy relationship. If you feel like you can't express yourself because you might get stonewalling, or that's a treatment where you just kind of get treated like you don't exist, watch what you're doing to prevent yourself from getting hurt. Yeah, and healthy relationships require effort, but they don't always require work. When you realize that you're putting in more work into this relationship than maybe what the other person's doing, or you find that you're putting work in the relationship where it's burning you out, you really need to pay attention to, if this is a healthy relationship or not. And again, you can notice this in the first couple months. Notice if somebody's love bombing you, if they start asking you about moving in right away, that's a sign. Again, in the beginning of the relationship, we have that romantic phase that lasts for about 6 months to a year where it's butterflies and sunshine. But again, this is above and beyond that. This is telling you that you're the best person they've ever met. If someone tells you that you're the best whatever they've ever met, you want to run the other way, right? That's a clue. If they're telling you you're the best whatever, that's logically can't be the case because there's 7 billion people in the world. So they tell you you're the best whatever, go. Because what they're doing is, again, they're idealizing you. They're putting you on a pedestal. And you're going to fall off that pedestal. It's just a matter of time.
Right. If your pets don't like them. Listen, I ignored my best friend. I ignored my dad. And of the people in my life who are like brilliant people who really know me really well, like those are the two. And I ignored both of them. So don't ignore it.
And you think you're in love, right? And love kind of does this. I mean, it's like temporary insanity, right? So that's where I always find helpful to tell people to write a list of what you're looking for in a partner. And when you're getting all those butterflies and that in love feeling, look back at that list and see how many characteristics that person actually meets. Like if you have on there loves dogs, and this person obviously does not get along with your dog doesn't like them. First, if your dog or cat has any issue with someone, just get rid of them. The person, not the cat or dog. No. Trust your cat or dog.
I would never look at him.
He's such a sweetie pie. So I had a dog that he only growled at 2 people in his life, and they both turned out to be animal abusers.
Wow.
One was a neighbor and one was somebody, a partner, someone I worked with. Yeah. So those were the only 2 people he ever growled at. So
they know.
That was sweetie pie. So they know. Yep. But yeah, listen to people that tell you that something's off.
Yep, absolutely. So what are the best and worst things you can do when you are dealing with someone who has that history of gaslighting? And, somebody brought up a parental relationship. Somebody's already brought up like intimate relationships. So I guess kind of both there.
First, know what your boundaries are. Reinforce to yourself what your basic human rights are. Your rights are to change your mind at any time, to say no at any time, to do less than what's humanly possible. And I'll repeat that again, because that's a tricky one. You have the right to do less than what's humanly possible. You have the right to do less than 100%, and that's okay. You also have the right to feel safe. I think we really need to remember what those rights are. And you have the right to say no without feeling guilty. That's another part too. You have the right to say no without someone shaming you or making you feel guilty. So keep that in mind. Good boundaries. How do you treat yourself when you're with this person? Because you're number one. You have to treat yourself well and take care of yourself, or our relationships just don't work as well, right? We have to make sure that we're practicing good self-care. So if you're working with someone that has gaslit you, again, it's really important to practice good self-care. Talk to a therapist, because some of the stuff people go through in these types of relationships is pretty icky stuff. I can't think of a better word than icky, but it really helps to talk with someone that's a neutral third party. If you are in a relationship with someone that has a history of gaslighting, but they've worked on their stuff, because I'll just mention first that there are different kinds of gaslighters and narcissists. Well, first I'll talk about gaslighters. So there are gaslighters that are purposely trying to manipulate you. And if they have narcissistic personality disorder, that's known as being very difficult to treat. These are people that will not go to the therapy. If they go to couples therapy, they'll tell the therapist that you're the problem and put everything on you. There's also gaslighters that learned this type of behavior from their parents. So their parents were unhealthy and they manipulated their child. Now, sometimes what happens with that is when the gaslighter gets older, they're in relationships and realizing, wait a second, this relationship isn't going the way I want it to. And I think I have some stuff I need to work on. And those people have gone to therapy. And a lot of them have worked on their stuff and they become a healthier person from it. So first you have to look at, have they gotten help for their gaslighting behavior? Have they made amends? Have they had relationships that have been healthier since that point? That's something important to look at. If it's a parent, again, has that parent made amends to you? Have they owned up to their behavior? Because a lot of times what we're just looking for is a validation of, yeah, you had some really crappy behavior towards me and I'd really like you to acknowledge it. So it really depends on what you define as being enough for you to consider reconciliation. Again, you do not have to reconcile with your abuser. I think that ideas that you can just get together and sing kumbaya and be okay with someone that abused you, I think is something that's not feasible in many cases. That person has to really show that they've done some work and also made amends to you. So I would really look at that before considering having someone that has had gaslighting behavior towards you, back into your life. You really have to consider, again, is it in your best interest?
Yeah. So what are some common misconceptions you hear from clients about their own past or even current relationships where gaslighting was frequent?
I hear a lot about, it was my fault. If only I'd done this, the relationship would have worked. I hear that a lot. And I think that's part of what abusers, gaslighters do to you, is they make you feel like it's all your fault. Again, if you go to couples therapy, this person will tell the therapist, you are the problem, that they are not the problem. You are 100% the problem. And logically, that cannot be the case, right? When you have two people in a relationship, never is it always one person's fault, right? And I'm talking about healthy relationships. Abuse in itself is a big issue, and that could be all one person perpetrating the abuse. But when you have a narcissist going to therapy, they're not going to therapy for themselves. They're going in to fix you. Narcissism has this feature called it's egocentric, which means that they think that they're fine. Everyone else has the problem. Most people are ego dystonic, which means that you think you got some issues and you got to work on them. Again, egocentric, you think everyone else has a problem, but you don't. So these are people who are not likely to go for therapy, I guess, again, unless they want to bash you or fix you to the therapist. And therapists that know what they're doing will pick up on this, but these people can be very suave, very persuasive, and can look very normal to people. So it's really important that when you're working with a therapist that you know if they have any training in gaslighting behaviors or narcissistic abuse. Because it can be really tricky. These people are really good at it. If you've been in a relationship with one, you know how tricky and good they are at fooling people into thinking that they're okay. These people can be upstanding pillars of society. They can be active in their community. Everybody thinks they're great, which they also will use against their victims or survivors and say, well, oh, sure, you can tell people about what's going on, but who do you think they're going to believe, me or you? And they'll say, well, I've got this amount of power, and how are they going to believe you about this? I mean, they will use that to their advantage. So it's really important, again, when you see someone for therapy, that's someone that has a background in treating narcissistic abuse. And also, and I think this is one of the questions we're going to talk about, but when you're in a relationship and that person refuses to go to therapy on your own if they refuse to go. That doesn't mean you can't go on your own. In fact, I recommend it if your partner doesn't want to go, or if your relationship with someone you suspect is a narcissist and you attend a therapy session, they just say how you're the problem. Start going to individual therapy. Because many times couples therapy with narcissism is not going to work that well because the narcissist will constantly focus back on you, or they'll eventually tell the therapist they don't know what they're doing, they'll leave.
Yeah.
So seek therapy on your own.
I actually have a perfect anecdote about this. So my ex and I, we tried couples counseling, which I think that the way that we went about it was right. I had an individual therapist, he had an individual therapist, and then we met together with both therapists once a week. So it was like 3 different appointments every week. And that, I think the concept is great.
On paper, it's great.
On paper, yes, absolutely. But and this was the dumbest thing that he could have brought up. We only went to this joint session like 5 times before he was like, we're not doing this again. End of story. Fortunately, I found myself a different therapist and kept going myself. But he brought up, one of the first things that he brought up was housework. And he said that he did way more housework than I do, which is like completely untrue. That he did way more housework than I do, that, you know, there was never anything that was fair, that everything always fell on him. And so his therapist actually said, why don't you pick an app and you mark off stuff? So we picked an app together. We started marking off stuff. Clearly, I was like doing at least double what he was doing based on the app that we were both using and both putting together. And we went into the next therapy session and they asked about it. And he said, oh, well, I just don't remember to mark stuff off. I said, that's okay. I mark things off for you so we can still look at the data. And he said that I was not marking everything off, that I was not doing things this, that I was not doing things that.
Focus, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then
your quote unquote dishonesty about the
yes,
app.
right.
Like, yeah.
Right. I'm like, let's look at the data. It's data. There's hard data to look at. Facts and figures here. And like I said, we only went 5 times before he was like, this is crap. It's never going to do anything. It's never going to change anything. It's never going to change me is what it was. It's never going to change anything. Right. It's never going to change me, not him. So yeah, it was just classic.
And that's a really interesting model, though, to have. I mean, the way I usually do couples therapy is I will not see people for individual if I see them for couples therapy and vice versa. Because I think that gets kind of muddled. So there are different therapists with different styles, but that's the way I do stuff. Is either you see me for couples therapy and I refer you out for individual, or I see you for individual and I refer you out for couples. Yeah. So, but I guess it's just different modalities for different types of therapeutic orientations, I think. Yeah. But I have not done couples therapy like that. I would find that to be very tricky.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it would have worked pretty well because we had very specific things we were trying to work through at the time. And he was seeing an addiction specialist. He's an alcoholic. He was seeing an addiction specialist. I was seeing someone who specialized in depression. And so it seemed like it was going to work out well. But like I said, we only went 5 times because, you know, why work on something that isn't making him look good?
Right. My workout plan is not a problem.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. NFS says, can you speak to the idea of the fake apology or the sarcastic apology?
Sure. So narcissist gaslighters rarely apologize. If they do, it's because you've said to them, I need you to apologize or I'm leaving. You know, they're getting that cut off in narcissistic supply. So let's say, well, I'm really sorry that your feelings got hurt. It's not a true apology. A true apology is, I'm sorry I did X and it caused you this, and this is how I'm going to work on it. That's a true apology. A false apology is, I'm sorry you're so sensitive about blah, 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 blah. Usually it has something to do with you're too sensitive, you looked at this the wrong way, or, you are, whatever the insult is.
I'm sorry you got your feelings hurt.
Only apology under duress.
Yeah. I'm sorry you got your feelings hurt.
Right. I'm sorry you got your feelings hurt. Even though you didn't really understand what I was doing. Yeah. Or that didn't really happen. But fine, if it makes you, feel better, that kind of thing. That's the false apology. And there's also that cognitive apology where you hear the words, but there's no feeling behind them. It's like the person's just like dead in the eyes. Like what they're saying has no connection to empathy. There's just no connection towards your pain. It's like that chip is missing.
Yeah. I like that. The chip is missing. That's good. Definitely resonates. For sure. So we've touched on this briefly, but at what point should you walk away? Is there a line to draw if it's a family relationship, or are you pretty stuck with them? And then also, if you are in an intimate relationship, at what point do you draw the line and say enough's enough? Then let's say that including if you have kids.
Well, I think it's different for everyone. And I think that's something that I talk with people in therapy about, is that when is enough enough? What's your line in the sand? In an ideal world, it would be as soon as we see someone practicing emotional abuse or verbal abuse. That's when we would leave. I know life is not that simple. And also, again, these are people that are very persuasive in beginning of relationships. So you automatically blame yourself when that starts turning. But that would be ideally when you go, if there's any inkling of this person having control issues. In the beginning of a relationship, what looks like possessiveness can be construed as, oh, they're passionate. But if you look at down the line, that turns into pathological jealousy. So we need to look at how these things that are kind of interesting about people, how they can flip into pathology later on. So we need to pay attention to that. So I think any line in the sand is when your rights are being violated, when you feel like something isn't safe. And again, look at those rights. You have the right to say no. You have the right to change your mind anytime. You have the right to feel safe. You have the right to do less when it's humanly possible. So that's from a book called Your Perfect Right by Alberti. That's Albertti. I recommend everybody gets that book, Your Perfect Right, because it's a great book. You just open it to any part and it'll tell you a little bit about what your rights are as a human being. I think that's really important to remember, especially when you have someone telling you that you don't have rights or treating you as less than. So yeah, the ideal would be any time that you feel like there's an imbalance of power that you leave. Again, it's not that easy because this is a slow buildup of this. But usually, again, you'll see the transition go from emotional, verbal abuse, financial, economic abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse. And again, this is lethal. So again, this is usually the first stage of multi-step abuse. And I think there's this common misconception that when you first meet somebody, they start physical abuse right away. And that's not how this works. This is a buildup to that. So again, get out as soon as you realize that there's a power imbalance, that you're not being treated the way that you need to be treated. And again, it's easier said than done because, you know, when you have a multi-year relationship with somebody, when you have kids, it's not that easy. But that's, again, where it's really important to talk with somebody, a mental health professional, about what your rights are, what your options are. And to also find out more about, you know, is this an abusive relationship? Because sometimes, again, when you've been in this for a while and it's been a slow build up to it, it really helps to have confirmation from, again, a neutral third party that what you're in is toxic.
Right. Yeah.
And again, I think also if you have anxiety, depression, or ADHD, I think you can be especially vulnerable to people that are gaslighters or narcissists. Or if you're grieving, if you've gone through a loss, I think people that are pathological will sense that. Or people in helping professions. I think that people will sense, people with pathology will sense that you're vulnerable and they will go after that. So I think it's really important to make sure that you have extra protection in the form of talking with someone about that.
Yeah. Is there any, I guess, comorbidity of like someone who is likely to gaslight and a typical diagnosis that they would fall under? Not saying every gaslighter has this diagnosis, but, you know, that kind of thing.
If people do have a diagnosis of gaslighting, usually it's antisocial personality disorder, or what we commonly refer to as sociopathy, or narcissistic personality disorder. Again, but you make a good point that gaslighters can also not have a diagnosis at all.
Right. Yeah.
And also, again, if you look at people with personality disorders, and what we're talking about is what's called cluster B personality disorders, which includes antisocial and narcissism, they very rarely tend to go to therapy on their own. So rarely going to have a diagnosis.
Yeah.
So again, you need to look at the behavior regardless of the diagnosis to see if that behavior is acceptable or not. But you do see if people are diagnosed as usually antisocial and narcissism.
Yeah. Morris said the hardest part of his relationship is figuring out what to get for dinner. Yes, I like it. Perfect. That's what it should. Well, right. It would be nice.
Good relationships are effort, but not work.
Yeah. Yep. NFS said it took me 20 years to stand up to my parent and cut off contact. I'm happy for you. If you were able to really do that, I'm really happy for you. That's wonderful. And it's hard. That's a hard thing to do. It's a hard decision to make.
I think especially too, if you have friends and family are telling you, oh, well, you shouldn't be doing that, like I said. But again, you are under no obligation to maintain contact with your abuser.
Yep. Yeah. So Jamie asks, I heard it is very common for narcissists and empaths to be in relationships with each other. Why is that?
I think that's when we speak to the vulnerable piece. And when we talk about, we like you and I, I'm not speaking about myself in third person. I'm like, that sounds narcissistic. But when we talk about like depression and
speaking on behalf of all therapists.
You what?
You're speaking on behalf of all therapists still.
That makes it sound much better. Thank you. And now I think I totally forgot the question. So,
Sorry.
okay, so wait, tell me the question again, because now I just start thinking about why I shouldn't be saying we.
That's that's okay. Why is it common for narcissists and empaths to be in relationships with each other?
So so that's when we talk about depression, anxiety, ADHD, going through loss. When you are vulnerable, people like this will kind of sense that out, because they know that people that are empathic will tend to be more accepting of a variation of behavior. And also, again, if you're in a helping profession, I wouldn't be in the business I was in unless I thought that people could change, right? So if you have someone that's preying on someone in a helping profession, whether it's a teacher, medical, therapist, there's a variety of helping professions. Again, part of the reason why people are in those professions is that they believe in people's power to change. So I think we're more likely to accept someone behaving not up to the standards that we believe they should behave, but still accepting them anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that's what makes people more vulnerable. And that's something you really have to watch, especially if you're empathic, is that you need to watch that people aren't preying on that. Yeah. And that includes also, if you've been widowed or you're a widower or divorced or anything where you're going through life adjustment, life changes, the kids, leaving the house, going off to college, you're vulnerable. And so I think that's an important thing to look at, especially when you are dating, is that whether someone is attracted to the vulnerability or to you.
Yeah.
That's something you really need to look at. And again, I keep saying this over and over again, but going to therapy and working through your loss and making sure that you rebuild your sense of self, especially after a big adjustment, big life change, I think is so important.
Yeah.
And if you don't have access to therapy, you can do your own work too, by just reading up on things and joining, online groups and, attending the streaming. So, things like that help build up that sense of self that sometimes gets kind of broken apart when you go through big life transitions, or if you've been in a toxic relationship.
Yep. And then sometimes you're just young and dumb whenever you start a relationship with someone and don't know what you're getting yourself into.
Because you don't know what you don't know, right? I mean, yeah.
I don't know anything about that.
Like the best ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So again, get that list together of things you're looking for in somebody, and look at that list when you are feeling butterflies and like you're on cloud 9. Look at that list and see, does this person really meet all this stuff? Yeah, and get specific on that list. Again, likes dogs.
Right.
Has a good relationship with her kids. Write down stuff that you are looking for in someone and get as particular as possible and write it as a positive. Instead of doesn't speak badly to me, you can say, well, it speaks respectfully to me, right? Turn it into a positive. And again, look at that list when you feel like you've temporarily lost sanity because you're in love with this person. Look at that. And that can be a real reality check for you.
Yeah. Yep.
It helps get our logical part of our brain running when the emotion part's taken over.
Not that I'm anywhere close to even wanting to date anyone again, but I think that's something that I should do. I should put together a list of things that someone has to, or not has to, but that someone ideally would have. That's a great idea.
Well, it also speaks to a point too that everybody's on their own time frame after they've gone through a separation, divorce, death of a spouse, and we don't have the right to tell people what the right time frame is.
Right. Yeah.
If someone wants to date right away, they have that right. If they don't want to date right away, they have that right too. And I think we really need to loosen up on this idea that people should be doing things at certain time frames.
Oh yeah.
It's when you're ready to do those things.
Yeah. We were watching Once Upon a Time, and if you haven't seen that show, it's not good after a certain point, but my 14-year-old and I did watch it all the way through, and we were watching the very last season, and at one point there's this young girl who's talking to her mom who is divorced, and the young girl says, well, Mom, why haven't you started dating yet? And my 14-year-old looked at me and goes, yeah, Mom. I was like, hold on. Hold on.
Because life, that's why.
Yeah, right. Because I don't wanna right now.
Right.
How about that?
Right.
How about that? Yeah. So how do you go about healing from a toxic relationship or one where you were a victim of a gaslighter? I know we touched on this a little bit earlier, but
And you need to cut off contact again. If you have
Mhm.
kids, it's a little bit trickier. And that's when we talked about, finding an attorney. There are also pro bono attorneys you can find online. There's a whole page of people that work in pro bono family law.
Yeah.
Also getting a parent coordinator and having a strict parenting plan. If you are able to cut off contact, make sure you maintain that no contact, because again, they will try to get in contact with you because they've lost their narcissistic supply. They will send, again, flying monkeys, people to draw you
I love
back
that.
in. And they'll also tell you everything that you wanted to hear during the relationship. Sure, we'll get married. Sure, we'll travel. Sure, we'll do, all the things that you wanted to do during the relationship, but they never, had time to do with you, or whatever it is, whatever their excuse was. So, and as soon as you get back in the relationship again, same thing. So it really helps, again, and I say this over and over again, to go to a therapist. If you don't have health insurance or it's not covering your health insurance, there are several therapists who'll do sliding scale based on your income or offer pro bono therapy. Many of us have moved towards teletherapy, so you can see a therapist from the comfort of your own home, which is really nice, especially if you have anxiety or depression. It's difficult for you to leave and go out places, especially right now too with the pandemic. But now, again, you can do that from the comfort of your home. So also connect with other people, join support groups. Talk with other people who have been through this, that have come out on the other side of it. I think that's always hopeful too, to see that people can rebuild. And I think it's really important to know that there's hope, that things can get better, and you can find a sense of peace in yourself and rebuild. And then in the future, if you're ready to look for a partner or meet someone, that you're able to do that in a way that you're pretty sure that the person's healthy. Because I think that sometimes if you've been through this, your alarm bells are out, right? Which they should be, right? You should be hyper vigilant of this stuff. But at some point too, what's a healthy relationship? What does a healthy person look like? I think is an important thing to learn as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I did pop into our chat the find help command. So that gives you local resources through Psychology Today. If you're looking for a sex positive therapist, you can type !sex positive. International Mental Health Support, there's To Write Love on Her Arms, that resource there. And then also the RAD Therapist Finder actually connects you with a real human to help you find someone who suits your needs. So you're welcome to use any of those resources, whatever you're facing. You absolutely deserve to be connected to help. Therapy's awesome. I love therapy. It sucks. Don't get me wrong.
It's work. I mean, there are going to be times you go to therapy and you're going to want to take a nap afterwards.
Yes.
I mean, it's a lot of work, but there's also the reward from it, which is feeling more, again, at peace with yourself and feeling like you can be the best version of yourself. Yeah.
There are
lots of hard work.
There are lots of times where I'm like, okay, my therapist is on my bad list today, but also I love her to pieces because she has helped me grow so much, even in those, like, you're on my bad list today.
That's actually a good sign, though, because I think when you have a connection with a therapist, I think therapists can challenge you, and I think it's going to be stuff that you're not always going to like pointing out stuff that maybe your behavior is incongruent with what you want in life. And I think that that's a very normal reaction. I think that also there's a side to that, which is if you meet with a therapist and two of you just don't click, that's normal. It's just like sometimes we click with certain people and sometimes we don't. Like, I think you and I, when we started talking, we were just laughing from the first 5 seconds. But if you meet with somebody and it's just not your cup of tea, you have every right to go see someone else. I mean, it's kind of like therapy is kind of like, in a weird way, shopping for a car. Like you're going to find some cars you're like, this is a perfect fit. And then there's going to be cars you're like, that's not going to work for me. And that's normal. So you may have to meet with 2 or 3 therapists, do like job interviews sort of with the therapist before you find the one that clicks with you.
Yep. Yeah, we've talked about lots and lots we've talked about on here. You can fire your therapist and find the one that works for you. Just don't fire therapy. Like, keep finding what works for you. But if you're not clicking with a therapist, get a different one.
Right. And I actually wrote an article in Psychology Today about firing your therapist. What are the times where you need to have a change in therapist? That could be that you've just reached this stagnant place in growth and you feel like you're not going anywhere, and you've talked to the therapist about it and you still aren't kind of going anywhere. I always recommend talk to your therapist about the issue first, even if it feels awkward, to see if it's something that they can resolve. And then if you feel like that still doesn't answer your satisfaction, or if you just feel like you need to change, seek another therapist.
Yeah.
You aren't going to click with everybody right away. But
Right.
if you do, that's great.
Right. Yeah. Are there any regular habits that you either maintain yourself or that you encourage clients to develop that you feel might not get enough attention, but that support overall well-being?
Well, first I'll say the ones that usually do get a lot of attention, which is exercise every day. The recommended amount of exercise, an hour a day, even if that's like cumulative. So if you walk up the stairs instead of taking the elevator or something, that counts. You need to get your heart rate up a certain amount. And I always have to add with the caveat of check with your doctor first before starting any exercise program. Meditation, mindfulness, the name 3 things exercise is really helpful. So that means when you are feeling keyed up or feeling not yourself, you name 3 things you can see, 3 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear. And you do that over and over again until you feel like you're centered and calm. That's a really helpful technique. So I think those are the 2 that a lot of people talk about. Again, therapy, we've talked about that several times. The ones that I think, again, travel, I think is a great stress relief strategy. Again, it depends on who you're traveling with and how you travel. But, if you're lucky enough to find a good travel partner or, have a system worked out for you, I think the more you travel, the easier it gets. I kind of like immersing myself in wherever I'm at. And that's not for everybody, but I think if you find a style that works for you, and again, you have a travel partner that does the same thing, or if you like traveling by yourself, I think that's a great way to reduce stress. I think another one is the social aspect, which I'm kind of like right on the line between introvert and extrovert. So I like being around people, but I can also get peopled out. So I think it's really important to have social contact, but only to the extent that you are comfortable with. Because not all of us need to be around people to relax. Sometimes, like I like relaxing by being by myself. So
Yeah.
That's the definition of introvert, right? Is that it's not that they are shy, it's just they relax by being by themselves. So I think it's know how much social contact you need and know when you're reaching your limit of it too. I think that's important. Good sleep habits, that's a huge one. I think that we don't talk about that enough. Make sure that you're getting enough sleep. If you are trying different sleep habits, like getting to bed at the same time, you're doing some relaxation activity before bed, and you still aren't able to get to sleep, talk to your doctor. You may need some medicine just to help you get to sleep, at least get you on a healthy sleep cycle. Because when you're going through grief or stress and you're not getting enough sleep, it really makes it more difficult to process and to think clearly.
Yeah.
So it's always a good thing to reach out for help too. I think that's really important.
Yeah. Well,
So
I mean,
I'm sure there's some other ones, but those are the ones I think of off the bat.
right. Well, and we talked about therapy. We talked about talking to your doctor about medications and stuff. Like, I feel like the important thing is to just make sure you're talking to everyone who is on your support team of health professionals, not just mental health. We talk a lot about mental health, but mental health and physical health tie to each other so closely a lot of the time.
They're the same thing,
Yes,
right? Because your brain is part of your body. So
yeah, right. Well, exactly. So yeah, it's really important to make sure you're being honest with all of your mental health professional and all of your health professionals as well about what's going on in your life. So that's great.
I think humor is really important too. That's a great stress reliever, and self-care is even just watching a funny movie, or there's got to be at least one friend that you have that just makes you laugh hysterically no matter what. And I'm lucky to have a friend like that in my life. And so we'll actually meet on virtual. She's in another state, so we'll meet on virtual reality sometimes, like a few nights a week, and we'll just laugh hysterically the whole time, like the whole hour and a half we're talking with each other. And again, it's something that I've known since I was a kid, so you have that history with them, and it just feels so good to laugh.
Yeah,
and that gets your dopamine up and your serotonin. And again, just sometimes watching a funny movie can do that for you too.
Yep. Yeah, earlier in chat they were talking about Bite said, I'm so glad I can come here for always seriousness. Some streams get silly sometimes, but not this one, not ever. And then, Moore said Friday streams. Like, yeah, no, we don't laugh here. That's not allowed. Humor is definitely appreciated here. Humor is definitely appreciated here.
I think, it's, what was it? Mel Brooks said, like, if you're not laughing, you're crying. I mean, it's like we have to laugh to get through things. And I also want to mention too, virtual reality is a really cool thing that you can go different places, even if you're quarantined. Because I know a lot of us still are, but that's a way that you can relieve stress. They have meditation apps on virtual reality, and it actually kind of makes you think that you're in a relaxing place. And again, you can do different activities with friends. They have a hide and seek app, my friend and I do, where we just hide places and find each other.
That's amazing.
It's so much fun. And you can, and there's also a part of this app where you can swim around. So we just swim around looking at fish, and it just sounds hysterically funny, and it is. And it's just silly stuff. And after having a long day, it's just fun just to swim with your best friend around looking at fish.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you're doing it in your living room. So I think virtual reality is something I just wrote an article about this in Psychology Today, where that's becoming kind of the new frontier of therapy, is that using virtual reality in conjunction with whatever therapy you're doing to do meditation, or there's a lot of exercise apps on VR. So that's something to look into.
Yeah. Hey, Jamie said, okay, fine. You convinced me to get off my butt and schedule my yearly physical. I haven't seen a doctor since before the pandemic, and I've got definite stressors that affect my physical health. Hey, look, we made a difference to at least one person today. That's all I'm here for. Hey, Kate, how are you today? Thanks for joining us. So if you weren't doing what you do now, or if you had chosen a different path completely, what would you be doing or have done instead?
When I was a kid, I wanted to be an obstetrician or an astronaut. And then I realized I can't do math. So that cut that career really short. But those are things I wanted to be when I was a kid. I always think that's interesting to ask people like what they want to be when they were a kid, because there's usually a sliver or something with that you wind up being, right? Or you want to be. And those both involve helping people in science. So there you go.
No, so that's psychiatry.
I don't really want to do that, but
that's psychiatry. Helping people in science.
Right.
Yeah.
I could still be an astronaut. I mean, it seems like a lot of work to be an astronaut, so I don't think I'd do that, but
yeah, probably.
Still pretty cool. I still like space stuff. So, I think that's also something too to look at is what excites you when you're a kid? What did you like to do? And that's something that you can get in touch with to have fun and just kind of, let go a little bit is what stuff did you like to do when you were a kid? And see if you can find a way to do that again.
Yeah, like
if
have
you like playing
crap
Legos,
ton of
get
pets.
yourself some Legos. Really,
Yeah,
I mean, get in touch with that fun part of you. Because again, these kind of relationships, the fun is sucked out of your life. So it's really important that we have fun just for fun's sake.
Yeah. Well, and there's I keep seeing it on Pinterest, and I've seen it in Discord a couple times. I scroll Pinterest when I can't sleep, so that's a whole other issue. But but there's
that's
this
another streaming session.
that's a whole other one. We're not talking about that. But there's this there's a couple things going around right now. I don't know, they're going around right now, but I keep seeing them. And it's about, do the thing that you couldn't do when you were a kid because your parents wouldn't do it for you. Like if they wouldn't let you get ice cream every week, go get ice cream. If they wouldn't let you buy those Legos, go buy those Legos and play with them. Like get in touch with your inner child. And there's nothing stopping you but yourself now as an adult.
It's never too late to have a happy childhood.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's wonderful. Okay, so it is time for our Disney/magic moment. And if you thought that I didn't have my wand today, you were sorely wrong. So I have my magic wand today. I have this is my magic wand. It's time for, so Bite Mark actually in the chat got it for me and sent it to me. So this is,
yes, so nice.
Because every stream I do a magic moment where I'm going to give you the power to eliminate one common misconception, opinion, theory surrounding mental health, mental illnesses, disabilities, or talking about mental health. And I'm just going to wave this. And now you get to tell us what it is that you're fixing.
Okay. I think I'm going to fix the conception that seeking help means you're weak. I think seeking help is a sign of strength, that you know yourself and you know that there's some work that needs to be done. And I think that that's pretty courageous, that people are reaching out to other people for guidance. So that's what I would change is that conception. Misconception.
I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Strength.
It really is. Yep. You are not an island. I was just talking about that with a friend earlier. Like you're not on an island by yourself ever, even though
like you are, you're not.
Right. Even though we're in a pandemic and a lot of us really do feel like we are on our own islands by ourselves. Like
and I know
you're absolutely not.
Make you feel like you're on your own island too. And I think that's how depression lies to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, you are definitely not alone.
Yep, absolutely. With that, we're kind of going to wrap up the interview here, but chat, if you have any more questions for our guests tonight, feel free to type them into the window there and put them in, and I will ask them. While we are waiting on the community to ask any remaining questions, I'll just open it up to you. Oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. We do have one other question.
Okay.
And that is, what is your day-to-day experience like as a therapist? And what was your experience like when you were in school to become one?
Oh, wow. I guess let's start with the current, like what my day-to-day like schedule is like, maybe. I have a mix of talking with clients, and then I also am working on my book, and then I write articles, and then I also do the podcast. So I really like my schedule. I always want to be my own boss, which I get to do. So I can do a whole bunch of different things during the day. I have a pretty varied schedule. When I was in training, I think the thing that stuck out in my mind is the first time we actually saw people. I think we were all terrified that we were going to mess people up, which I think we all had that fear. And I've heard that from people that prescribe too. Like the first time they prescribed medicine, they thought they were going to do it completely wrong. And I think most people just want to be heard. Most people just want to be heard and validated. So I think that's the thing that I walked away from training with, amongst a lot of other stuff, is that, you know, and I think people that are starting out therapy should be a little cautious, or a lot cautious about when they first meet with people. But again, I think the biggest thing is people just want to be heard. Mm-hmm. They want to be seen. And again, you know, day-to-day life, I have a really nice blend of different things that I do. And I'm super fortunate that I have the job that I have. Yeah. So I think that kind of answers the question, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. I just want to say welcome to folks who came in here with that raid with Brian. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. Hope y'all are doing great tonight. And then chat, if you have any other questions, like I said, just put them into the window there. We'll get them asked. But I will turn it over to you and just say if there's anything we didn't cover that you want to talk about, anything that you want to recommend, websites, anything. I will pop your links into chat one more time for those who weren't here at the beginning. But I'll just open it up to you and let you take over.
Well, I think first it's important to remember there's always hope. There's always a solution out there. The types of therapy I practice are cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, solution-focused therapy. So I think if you want to look up anything about those, and again, you can do a lot of really good work on your own too, if you're not ready for therapy, or you just don't want to get into it yet. But I would really recommend talking to a mental health professional. I want to be very clear that you want to make sure that person's licensed. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure, you know, that they have experience in what you're seeking help for. You can get referrals from people in the community. I think that can be really helpful. Referrals from trusted family and friends. Let's see, my website, stephaniesarkis.com, that has links to all the different things I'm at, all the social media, all that stuff. So I think that's the most important thing, is that there's help available. Mm-hmm. And to reach out to your resources. And it can be really uncomfortable and awkward to do it at first, but the more you reach out, I think the easier it gets.
Yeah, absolutely. I put your links back in here. So if you're looking for Stephanie's website or anything, it's right there. Links to her book as well. And then also the links to all of the Therapy Finder stuff that we have linked in chat. And Bite Mark said, thank you so much for being here. And I just appreciate it. Frost actually added a quote that says it's never too late to have a happy childhood with your name and the date. So,
thank you.
So we've got that in here now too.
Thank you.
Thanks for sticking around for that conversation with Dr. Sarkis. I know some of what we covered today wasn't light. Talking about gaslighting, narcissistic abuse, and toxic relationships can hit really close to home for a lot of us. If you're sitting with big feelings right now, you are not alone. This stuff is real, and it's really messy. It can take a while to even admit that it's happening, let alone figure out what to do about it. What I love about this conversation is how Stephanie broke things down in a way that's easy to understand, but doesn't sugarcoat anything. Whether it's a partner who's constantly shifting blame, a parent who's always making you question your memories, or even a coworker who twists every story to make themselves look good. Gaslighting isn't just something that shows up in extreme situations. It's something a lot of people are dealing with quietly every single day. You don't owe anyone access to you just because they've always had it. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to protect your peace, even if other people don't understand it, especially if they don't understand it. If you recognized pieces of your own story in this episode, I hope it helped you feel a little less alone, and maybe even gave you some words for what you've been experiencing. Whether you're still in the middle of it or you've already walked away, I want to remind you that healing isn't linear, and you don't have to do it perfectly. You're doing your best, and that is what matters. If this episode resonated with you, please take a second to like, subscribe, or follow the show on whatever platform you're listening on. And if you've got a minute, leaving a review or a comment is one of the easiest ways to help Even Tacos Fall Apart reach more people who need these conversations. You can also follow me on social media. I am MommaFoxFire everywhere. And check out the links in the show notes for resources, books we mentioned, or more ways to connect. If you know someone who could use this episode, share it directly with them. Send them a link. Sometimes hearing a conversation like this at the right moment can make a huge difference. All right, y'all, until next time, take care of yourself, be kind to your brain, and remember, even tacos fall apart, and we still love them when they do.